the Chargers. I said that they were going to need another quarterback. They went and got another quarterback. It was the quarterback I talked about last week. They signed, or they actually traded for Taylor Heinicke, who came from the Atlanta Falcons. This guy was a former starter for a brief time with Carolina. He was a starter for the Washington Commanders. 12-11 as a starting quarterback, 39 touchdowns, 28 interceptions. As a backup to Justin Herbert, I think he's really reliable. The thing that's unique is what happened in the last 48 hours. The new general manager of the Chargers, Joe Ortiz, he's made more deals in 48 hours than the former general manager Tom Telesco made in his 9 years. He traded for, I think, a potential starting cornerback in Elijah Molden. He came from the Tennessee Titans. They just made a deal. They got Hassan Hawkins, a former running back at Michigan who played for Jim Harbaugh. Unbelievable special teams gunner and averaged almost 22 yards per kick return. So those guys are coming in the front door. They made some decisions on name players not to keep. They cut the big 6'8" tight end Donald Parham. He wound up signing almost immediately, going to another team. He was cut. J.T. Woods, a safety, who they talked about a lot as flipping to a cornerback, he got cut. Isaiah Spiller, former fourth-round draft pick, he got cut. Now, he just got re-signed and put back on the developmental squad. And Luis Perez, the quarterback who done really well in spring football, a couple of these different leagues, Luis Perez, he also got cut. But the acquisition of Heinicke, that to me is a really good insurance policy for the Chargers. So we go from that to Kansas City. And Kansas City really active at roster cutdown time. They gave up on Kadarius Toney, the guy that made all the mistakes last year, dropped passes, lining up offside, always seemed to have an explanation or an excuse. He just never grew as a wide receiver. They cut Toney. He's still unemployed at this hour. They turned around and they went and got a backup quarterback for Patrick Mahomes. They got Bailey Zappi, who had just been cut from New England. He had started a bunch of games in the post-Tom Brady era. They signed him almost immediately when it went on the waiver driver. And they also picked up Sammy Perrine, who's a really good and accomplished third-down pass-catching running back. He had been with the Denver Broncos. Denver wanted to bring him back, put him on developmental. He said no. Broncos, this is a really good acquisition. They wound up getting Parham at tight end. That's a big pass-catching tight end who's going to catch some balls, I think, in Sean Payton's offense. One of the surprises is they cut Tim Patrick. He had a really good preseason. Big 6'4" wide receivers, had 2 years of injuries. It's the first time in 2 years he was healthy. He caught a bunch of balls in exhibition games. He wound up getting cut. Dallas Cowboys. Now, they did sign C.D. Lamb. We had talked about that. They've yet to sign Dak Prescott. I'm sure somewhere down the road that deal's going to get done. But this, I think, is an impressive deal. They went out and they signed ex-Minnesota Viking running back Dalvin Cook. He's got over 6,000 yards rushing, 43 touchdowns. He was kind of a cap casualty a year ago in Minnesota. Had just a brief cup of coffee, but it was really late in the season with the Jets. Didn't get re-signed. This guy can play, and this guy will run it. This guy will catch it. This is a pretty good acquisition. And then the Rams. I wish I had an explanation as to why they did this, but they're already without Aaron Donald, who retired, the greatest modern-day defensive tackle in the NFL. Now they cut the guy that lined up behind him, their strong inside linebacker, Ernest Jones, who wanted a contract extension, had a year left. They cut him. And actually, they wound up trading him to Tennessee for a late-round draft pick. This guy had 145 tackles last season. And now I know they've got a bunch of young linebackers who run. They're going to have a very, very young defense for Sean McVay this year. But Ernest Jones owed him 1 year on the contract. And even though he wanted an extension, they said, no, need you to play the season out. He had 145 tackles. He was everywhere. And they traded him to the Tennessee Titans, which means they're going to be really, really young on the defensive side of the football. And I was just shocked. I was shocked that they hit the eject button on him, and they didn't get very much for him, which doesn't make a bit of sense to me. So that he was asking money. They didn't want to do it at this point in time. He wasn't a distraction. The guy was a football player as a gamer. So John Riley's a lot of news and notes here, starting with the Taylor Heinicke story with the Chargers, finishing with the Ernest Jones trade with the LA Rams. Go ahead. Take the football, run with it.
Well, the Heinicke thing was funny because like last night I texted you and it took me like 2 or 3 tries to get Heinicke into my cell phone because it kept trying to autocorrect it to Heineken, like the beer.
Yeah.
And then you get it Heinicke and you write back, I know what I know, so there you go, Hacksaw. This NFL cut day has got to be so hard for the players and the coaches. And when Parham gets cut and then he immediately gets picked up by the Broncos, I'm not so much dissing on the Chargers there, but it's just good for Parham that, he's going to find a spot because
with that coach, Sean Payton.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a great opportunity, but let's talk about Payton. Why did he keep all 3 quarterbacks?
It's a huge question. There's a salary cap issue. I mean, they are stuck with if they cut Zach Wilson, they have to pay Zach Wilson as he goes out the door. If they cut Stidham, who they gave a multi-year contract extension to, which boggled my mind before the draft, they're going to have to eat that contract too. So maybe you keep all 3. Now you're going to keep all 3 on the active roster. That's really surprising to me. Now, maybe somebody gets hurt, or maybe Nix gets overwhelmed so that you do have Zach Wilson, who played well in preseason, and you still have Stidham, who seems like a smart guy who can manage games. So it's strange. There are a couple of other teams that are keeping 3 quarterbacks, which is not the norm. This might have something to do with salary cap. This might have some insurance policy in case Nix can't handle what Nix is going to have to handle as a starter opening day. Fascinating to see the way he's doing business.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. It was like just in case Nix wasn't as good as we thought. But the team, it's a 53-man roster, right?
Plus 16 on developmental.
Plus 16 on developmental. But isn't there also the +1 for the 3rd quarterback?
No, that rule got taken away. Players Association raised hell last week, and the 3rd active guy, that's not going to be there.
Ah, okay. Sorry, things change.
Yeah, which is kind of weird to me because of the injury factor. But in the union, I think the union looked at it very differently with the opinion. You can't jerk the 3rd guy around because the 3rd guy is on developmental, makes minimum. Mm-hmm. He's not on an NFL type contract. And if he has to be called up, then he gets a one-time payday that he'll get a game check.
Okay, I got you. So it's a money thing.
I think it's a money thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, 3 quarterbacks and a new tight end. And I think Sean Payton's had himself a really good preseason training camp with all his running backs are healthy. All the wide receivers are healthy, which kind of surprised me that they let Tim Patrick go because he was one of the veterans that had finally gotten healthy after back-to-back years of major injuries. So I think Denver is going to be fun to watch. And what do you think about this running back going to the Dallas Cowboys? I mean, that guy's, you talk about Dalvin Cook, he's got a track record.
Yeah, he does. But then Ezekiel Elliott's still there too, right?
Yeah, but he doesn't have a lot of gas left in the tank. At least I don't think he does.
Right. So, I mean, the fact they got Cook is good for them. But remember, Cook was on the Vikings, and then didn't he switch to another team
He went to the Jets.
The Jets.
Got there late, never really got to play. Jets' season was unraveling because of the Aaron Rodgers injury. They never brought him back. I think he's going to be a surprise contributor to the Cowboys because he was a cap casualty because he was making monster money in Minnesota and didn't want to give money back, and he got cut. The guy can still play.
Good. Well, good players deserve to play.
Okay, we go from that